Okay, so imagine this. You live in a city where just crossing the street could literally knock 7 years off your life expectancy. And no, this isn't some dystopian movie plot. This is the reality, right now, in modern South Africa. It's a place where a system of racial segregation, apartheid, was officially abolished 30 years ago, but somehow it's still running the show, holding the country captive. So how is that even possible? That's what we're going to find out.
All right, let's start in Cape Town. You've probably seen the pictures, right? It's gorgeous, one of the wealthiest cities in South Africa. But if you look just a little closer, you start to see it, this invisible wall. And it's a powerful barrier, one that doesn't just separate neighborhoods, it actually separates destinies.
I mean, just look at how close this is. It's unreal. On one side of the street, you've got Namzamo. It's 92% Black African, and many people are living in these overcrowded tin shacks. Then literally just a few meters away, you have Strand, 83% white with luxury homes, big backyards, the works. It's the same city, but it's like two different planets existing side by side.
And this isn't just about aesthetics or comfort. This division has a real, terrifying cost. For Black Africans, living on that side of the invisible wall means on average your life expectancy is 7 years shorter than your white neighbors. Think about that. 7 years. 7 whole years of your life gone just because of your address.
So that brings us to the big question, right? The central mystery of all this. The apartheid laws are gone, Nelson Mandela is this global icon of freedom, so why on earth, 30 years later, is this wall still standing? Well, to figure that out, we have to go back and see how it was designed. Okay, so to really get what's happening today, we've got to rewind. The system was called apartheid. In Afrikaans, that literally means apartness or separateness. But this was so much more than just simple ugly racism. This was a meticulously engineered system, a calculated, deliberate design to control every single aspect of a person's life, all based on the color of their skin.
And the cruelty was baked into these completely absurd rules. Get this, one of them was called the pencil test. They would literally stick a pencil in your hair. If it fell straight out, congratulations, you were classified as white. If it stayed stuck, you were black. And sometimes, if it kind of hung there for a second before falling, you might be classified as colored, this whole other racial category they invented. This wasn't science, obviously. It was a weapon, and it was so arbitrary that it could literally split families apart. One brother classified white, getting all the privileges, and the other black, condemned to oppression.
And none of this was random. It was totally systematic. Think of it like they were building a prison, one brick at a time. A series of laws, each one stacked on top of the last, created this whole architecture of control. First, the Natives Land Act. Boom, your land is gone. Then, the Group Areas Act tells you where you can and cannot live. Then, pass laws meant you couldn't even move freely in your own country. And the final piece, the Bantu Education Act, which was designed to imprison their minds.
And the goal here was completely explicit. I mean, they weren't even trying to hide it. Listen to this quote from Hendrik Verwoerd. He's known as the father of apartheid. He said, "What is the use of teaching the Bantu child mathematics when it cannot use it in practice?" The whole point of their education system was to create a permanent underclass of laborers, deliberately deny black kids access to things like math and science so they'd be stuck in jobs where they could only follow orders.
But of course, you can only push people so far. No system of oppression like this ever goes unchallenged. As the regime squeezed tighter, the resistance just grew stronger and stronger. And it all came to a head in one single powerful moment, captured in one single photograph that would finally get the world to pay attention.
So the flashpoint was Soweto, 1976. The government came out with a new rule. All black students had to be taught in Afrikaans. I mean, think about that. They were being forced to learn in the language of their own oppressors. So the students, they took to the streets. They weren't carrying weapons. They were carrying their school books. This was a protest for the right to an education, the freedom to just learn.
And how did the police respond? With bullets. In the middle of all that chaos, a photographer captured an image that would change everything. It's a picture of a student carrying the body of a 13-year-old boy, Hector Peterson, who had just been shot dead by the police. That single photograph went viral, 1970s style. It was published everywhere, and suddenly, apartheid wasn't just some distant political issue anymore. It was a global moral outrage. The world simply couldn't look away now. And after that, the pressure was just immense. It was like a cascade, one thing leading to the next. International banks refused to give loans. Big US and European companies started pulling out. Global sanctions hit, and they hit hard. The South African economy started to totally fall apart. It got so bad that even white business owners inside the country started demanding change. The regime was getting squeezed from all sides, outside and in.
All that pressure finally worked. It forced the apartheid government to the negotiating table, with Nelson Mandela's party, the African National Congress, the ANC. And this was it. This was the moment of victory, the dawn of a new, free South Africa. But, and this is a huge but, it was also a moment of a really difficult and very controversial compromise.
So, they had won their political freedom. But this is where the story takes a really sharp turn. The apartheid system was on its knees. So why wasn't there a complete economic transformation? I mean, why wasn't all the land and the wealth that had been stolen just given back to the people it was stolen from? What stopped them?
Well, the answer lies in this crucial compromise. On the one hand, you have the ANC's original goals, which were pretty revolutionary. Take back the land, nationalize the mines and the big industries. Basically, take back the country's wealth. But on the other hand, you have the deal they actually made. Private property rights were protected for the white minority. The mines weren't going to be nationalized. Why? Because to avoid a total economic collapse and maybe even a civil war, Mandela's new government made a choice: stability now over radical justice later.
And here's the legal fine print that basically sealed that deal. It's a clause in the new Constitution, Section 25. And it said, yeah, the government can reclaim land that was stolen during apartheid, but it has to pay just and equitable compensation for it at full market value. That one little clause made it completely impossible for the new government, which had no money, to actually buy back the land. It effectively protected all the wealth that had been accumulated and locked the physical layout of apartheid right into the new South Africa.
And that compromise brings us right back to where we started. That deal, that elite compromise, wasn't just some political handshake. No, it was a decision that guaranteed that the economic and physical structure of apartheid would live on long after the system was officially dead. And you don't have to take my word for it. The proof is in the numbers today.
Okay, get ready for this, because these numbers are just staggering. 30 years later, South Africa's white minority, which is only 8% of the population, still owns 72% of the country's farmland. Meanwhile, the black majority, 80% of the people, owns just 4%. It's insane. The map of who owns what has barely changed at all.
And it's the exact same story when you look at the workforce. White people hold 2/3 of all executive management jobs. Black people, just 14%. But then you look at unskilled labor and the numbers just completely flip. 83% of those jobs are held by black South Africans. That economic pyramid that Hendrik Verwoerd dreamed up, it's still standing perfectly intact.
And maybe this is the most shocking statistic of all. For so many people, that promise of economic freedom just never arrived. In fact, the total number of unemployed people in South Africa today is actually higher than it was in 1994, the year apartheid ended.
So what does all this mean? Well, it leads to a really tough conclusion. The massive inequality you see today isn't a sign that the new South Africa has failed. It's actually a sign that the old system is still succeeding. It's working exactly as it was designed to, as a powerful economic machine that just keeps churning out inequality, all on its own, without needing racist laws to keep it going.
And that leaves us with one last really challenging question. The racist laws are gone, the police aren't enforcing segregation anymore, but the separation, the massive wealth gap, the lack of opportunity, all of it is still there. So how do you fight a system that's so deeply baked into the economy, into the very geography of the country, that it basically runs on economic autopilot? That is the invisible wall South Africa is still fighting to tear down today.